O talento e o futuro passará agora a ser escrito numa conversa que atravessa oceanos e continentes, com Trip Hawkins, fundador e primeiro CEO da Electronic Arts, visionário e empreendedor na área dos videojogos, e com o nosso governador, Sérgio Almeida.
Vamos dar continuidade à nossa conferência. Sabemos sempre que o tempo, como dizia o Pedro Brunhosa, também é aquilo que fazemos com ele. E realmente com o Pedro Brunhosa o tempo passou muito rápido, porque ele é interessantíssimo nas suas abordagens. Vamos continuar com o tema do talento, abordando aqui também o tema, naturalmente, do futuro, com alguém que, apesar de já ter conquistado muita coisa, não para de nos surpreender. O nosso próximo convidado vai estar connosco em inglês, naquilo que é também uma abordagem muito breve, sucinta, dado o adiantado da hora, mas só para dizer que é conhecido por ter criado uma empresa que tem um jogo muito, diria, desejável para muitos que aqui estão também, que é o FIFA. O Trip Hawkins, que é o fundador da Electronic Arts. Trabalhou durante muitos anos como diretor de estratégia e marketing da Apple. É um guru, enfim, como se diz hoje também na gíria Silicon Valley. É alguém que inspira hoje, pelo mundo fora, empreendedores, empresários, pessoas, governos, nações, e que nos traz uma visão muito também sobre esse futuro e sobre a tecnologia e o que hoje está a acontecer no mundo. E, portanto, sem mais demoras, agora fazendo aqui uma mudança para o inglês, creio que já podemos avançar e eu queria dar, neste caso, as boas-vindas ao Trip Hawkins. Good afternoon, Trip Hawkins. Trip Hawkins. Good afternoon, boa tarde.
Hola, everyone.
Bom, a minha primeira pergunta é esta. You are a serial entrepreneur who has been through multiple market changes and paradigm shifts about technology. Human interactions with machines, the internet, and now this new future with communicating and working from home are changing the game. Do you think all these processes are good for help awaken the talent and the better empower of the people for the future?
Yes, I think they do, and they are. One thing to realize is that everything about computer technology, initially it was used by the government, it was used by the military, it was used by very big corporations. At that point, it was just a tool. And what it has become since that initial birth is a medium. Computers are now a fundamental way in which we communicate with each other and how we get a lot of things done that are a routine part of the lives of billions of people. There are billions and billions of computers and mobile phones, and pretty much everybody around the planet has at least some degree of access to them, whether it's in their school or in their home or through their mobile devices. So this new medium that has come about in these recent years, it has spectacular power. And we are taking just extraordinary power and we're putting it in the hands of children and most adults, and it's really stunning and amazing. And I think from this time period in human history, this will be one of the things that people still talk about in history books in 500 years, is the time period when the power of computers became available to the public, to the people, so that everybody could benefit from it. Now, when you look at the history of media, there are always two sides to each of these coins. There is the good ways that people use it, and then there are some bad ways that it gets used. So Gutenberg 500 years ago invented the printing press, and there have been some really, really great books that have been of great benefit to humanity. And then there have been some very bad books written by bad people with bad intentions that have caused some trouble and started some wars and created some very bad things. And of course, we've also seen from time to time very restrictive, narrow-minded cultures that have burned books. So what is going on with computers today basically is a similar thing. We have seen examples in the last few years of discovering the ways in which social media and advertising can mislead people, and how difficult it can be to figure out on the internet what is true and what is false. So that's an example of the kind of issue that our society has to deal with. But the benefits, the good things that we get as people from computer technologies and all of these new things, they way are better and outweigh any negatives that we have to manage and worry about. And topics again like privacy and security.
So we can really balance this thing between technology and humans. It's here to stay. Another question I have is how can these entrepreneurs, these people around the world, overcome their fears, burn their boxes, as Trip Hawkins says, and help society, involve them by offering their talents and skills without social barriers?
I think in any country, any region, any city, there is a culture established and a society that everyone is trying to fit into. And that is the basis for what people believe and what they think is allowed and what they think is possible, what they think they can find the support for doing. So for example, if you go to a bank and you want to borrow money to buy a house, you can get a mortgage. That's an established social and cultural tradition. But you need to make a down payment. And maybe you can do that, maybe you cannot afford that. So that's an existing social construct that the humans have invented and everyone uses. But a startup business, you go to a typical commercial bank, they're not going to lend you money because you have no assets that can protect their risk. So, you know, when we think about Portugal and we think about how to make a place like Silicon Valley, you have to remember that many oddball characters, many unusual people that were rebels, that were in disagreement with their governments, that didn't do what the mainstream is doing, they were willing to leave the countries they were born in. And they made a journey in the last 200 years to this place called California, which is in fact very far away from most of the rest of the world. It has always been very hard to get to California. And so the people that chose to come to California, that managed to survive and make it to California, they then generally have had to invent something to do when they get to California. So these are unusual people. And this is one of the reasons why California became, in the last 200 years, a very big, very powerful economy, because it collected all of these characters, all of these oddball pioneers that were willing and tough enough and had ideas. And then they came to California and started to invent things. And so you end up not just with Silicon Valley, you also end up with Hollywood. You end up with an enormous aviation and aerospace industry. There are so many amazing industries where California became a leader in a very short period of time. So if we think about any other part of the world, we have to ask, what is going on in the society, in the culture, in the government, and what are the beliefs that people have about innovation and entrepreneurship and what kind of support is available for that. So inside Portugal, there are plenty of artists and creative people and dreamers and great ideas. Those people need to feel empowered. They need to have access to tools. They need to have access to capital. There have to be educational institutions that are preparing courses and curriculum that help them learn what they need to learn. There have to be mentors. There have to be venture capitalists that are willing to make investments in early stage companies. Some of these things may already be available and some may be nearby. You know, maybe there are European venture firms that are not based in Portugal, but that would be willing to invest in businesses in Portugal. And then it's really about hustling and figuring out how to put things together and turn them into good business propositions. And I'll just remind you that if we go back 500 years, Portugal was one of the most powerful countries in the world. And they had incredible wisdom about navigating in the oceans and shipbuilding and incredible courage to go places around the world that no one had ever been before. And I personally find it very amusing that Portugal is so smart. They were so smart about the world that when Columbus came to ask to sail west to get to India, the leaders in Portugal were able to tell Columbus that that is not where India is. That is not the best way to get to India. And they were right. And Columbus got turned down and he had to go to other places like Spain to be able to get resources so he could sail west. What can happen in any time, in any place, is if someone that has the power, someone that has the resources, is willing to support a pioneer and an innovator. Magellan is another example. You know, when we step up in our culture, in our society, and we believe in these dreams, and we allow these innovators that are great leaders and very determined and smart and tough, if we allow them to do the impossible will happen. And it's beautiful. And this can happen in many, many ways in the coming years in Portugal.
And what about these new generations and technology and all of this mix we have now? The pandemic put our children very close to the technology, and what do you think about it?
This is such an important aspect of what's happening with these new technologies, is that children have access to them. They're going to increasingly play a bigger and more fundamental role in how we educate our children. It's an incredibly powerful tool because we learn by doing. And this is the beauty of play and the beauty of games. And children that are learning about technology and devices because they're motivated to play with their friends and play games and think and be involved in the games. I discovered this myself as a child, even without computers, that there's just incredible power in play. And I just noticed how my brain was so activated. And this has been proven by brain scientists since that time, that the single best way to increase human intelligence is through interaction. And when we interact, we are at play. And we were able to make decisions and see what happens and follow that feedback loop. It's so powerful for education, and it's so powerful for these children now that are born as digital natives. They are growing up in this digital era, and they are very comfortable. You talk about the ocean and the sharks. I think we all of us that are adults know that the children are comfortable than we are already swimming in the digital world and dealing with whatever sharks may be there. And I'm still struggling to figure out some of the new apps and web services that sometimes I need to have one of my kids come in and help explain it to me.
So we are talking about kids, technology, gaming. Eu vou chamar aqui alguém que é mais especialista do que o Trip Hawkins em jogos, crianças, que é o meu filhote António. António, podes vir aqui ao palco? Uma salva de palmas para o António, é a primeira vez. Ainda para mais o criador do FIFA. Ele joga mais o PES, Pro Evolution Soccer. So, António, senta aqui. Vamos fazer aqui. My last question. What are, in your opinion, the big challenges to teaching, learning, and all the education system and schools?
Well, there's so much room for growth there because teaching and schools, they have been doing the same thing, reading books, giving lectures, giving tests, writing essays. That has been the method now for several hundred years. And, it became useful for people to learn how to read once we had the ability to make books. And it's actually kind of incredible that there are countries like Germany. Martin Luther in Germany 500 years ago, he translated the Bible into English. It took him 3 years to do that while he was hiding in a castle in Germany. And that became the first book ever published in the German language. And of course, when you start to have this local demand for reading books in your local language, now you need schools and they need to teach people how to read and write and do arithmetic. But we're still really in the same structure in terms of how school works. So we are just on the beginning, at the very first minute of this process of bringing computers more fundamentally in, bringing software design more fundamentally into how we do curriculum. And this is something that I learned more about in the last company that I started, the If You Can company, where we spent a few years building a game that kids can play called If, the emotional IQ game. It's a game that I built in collaboration with some of the world leaders in emotional intelligence. And there are 50 lesson plans from their teaching curriculum that we teach in that game and that we test people to make sure that they've learned it before we move on. So doing all of this through a game was really quite an interesting exercise for me. It helped me learn a lot more about emotional intelligence myself. But it's a very different way to teach because you're letting people play a game that is so immersive, where they care about the story and they care about the world they're in and they care about the characters that they're dealing with, and they're learning by doing. And this is going to be a big shift. It'll take maybe 50 years, 100 years for it to really become the mainstream way that we teach and learn. But it is in the early days of that transition.
Thank you so much, Steve Hawkins. Your final words?
I just want to say that you have incredible power to do things in this world. You are in a unique position that no one else is in, and only you are in that position. So you have the ability to help people and to do amazing things. Believe in yourself and summon your strength, step into your power, and go pursue your dreams and your passions, and you will live a good life. You will make an impact and have tremendous satisfaction and contentment. Believe me.
Obrigado, Trip Hawkins. Thank you so much. Obrigado, António, também. Vamos levantar agora? Já acabou? Bem, agora já não quer sair daqui. Da vez do papá. Estavas confortável? Muito bem. Então, eu vou só levar aqui o António e venho já, não é, Rita?
Sim.
Vais precisar de mim?
Já, imediatamente.
Já imediatamente.
Sim, sim.
Então vou só por aqui.